And, J.D. Vance is an embarrassment to the law school that I attended. But the fact of the matter is he's telling us something that we should have already known. And last week I said it. They are not going to obey court orders. They have decided that they are going to push the boundaries on executive power by basically infringing on the Article 1 power of Congress.
George Conway just went full savage on J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, and trust me, it's a train wreck you won't want to miss. Watch as George doesn't just throw shade, he's got the receipts, and he's handing them out like candy at Halloween. J.D. Vance, totally exposed. Trump? Well, let's just say George isn't pulling any punches. It's a brutal takedown that's as hilarious as it is jaw-dropping. You won't believe how bad things get for these two. Buckle up, this one's gonna sting.
Donald Trump, we know, is basically a Matryoshka doll, how do you say that, of lies and mendacity. Basically, he'll lie, then he'll lie about lying, then he'll lie about lying about lying, and then he'll lie about lying about lying about lying. And that's what he...
George Conway didn't just expose J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, he turned them into punchlines so hard even their supporters had to double check if they were still on the right side of reality. Vance, the man who somehow convinced an entire state to send him to the Senate, has a reputation that's about as solid as a sandcastle in a hurricane.
The only recourse is to go out on the streets and march. That is the only recourse. The courts have no mechanism to enforce their orders other than through the United States Marshal Service, and thus through the Department of Justice, thus through the executive branch. The reason why we obey court orders is because the executive branch complies with court orders. If the executive branch does not comply with court orders and makes a point of saying that we will not comply with court orders, the rule of law, as far as the federal government is concerned, is over. And that is something we need to start focusing on and discussing, because that's where these people will go.
First, let's talk about J.D. Vance. This guy, a self-proclaimed intellectual who somehow convinced the people of Ohio that his book on hillbillies made him an expert in governing, has the political depth of a kiddie pool. In fact, when it comes to serious policy, Vance is about as qualified as someone who reads a Wikipedia page for 30 seconds before starting a podcast. He's the kind of guy who speaks in sound bites that sound smarter than they are.
There is no logical stopping point for them. And this is, the only recourse will be for people to get out and say, we want the rule of law. We want a government that obeys the law. And that's going to require people to go out on the streets, because there is no other alternative.
He's the embodiment of empty rhetoric, the type of guy who tries to sound profound while desperately hoping no one realizes he doesn't actually know what he's talking about. You could listen to him for hours and still have no idea what his actual stance on anything is, because the only thing he truly believes in is being as bland as possible to avoid offending anyone. Except for, of course, anyone who might actually expect him to take a stand on, issues that matter.
So you went to law school, the same law school as J.D. Vance. What do you think he learned there that prepped him for what happened last night?
I think that what he might have gotten out of Yale Law School would be just sort of trying to be ethereal. I mean, that's what a lot of people get out of Yale Law School. It's an odd place to go to law school, because a lot of people end up not being lawyers, and they end up just doing something else, and they end up not really focusing on the law very much. But if you want to learn law, you can actually learn it there, because there's just a thing. And I don't think there's enough practical advocacy training there, or maybe, again, it's been 40 years since
And then there's Donald Trump, the human embodiment of a bad reality TV show. For a man who prides himself on being a winner, he seems to lose more times than a toddler playing chess against a grandmaster. It's honestly impressive how consistently wrong Trump has been about everything. His take on politics is as shallow as a puddle, and every time he opens his mouth, it's like watching a toddler try to explain quantum physics. Entertaining, but deeply concerning that someone took him seriously in the first place.
There was a bipartisan immigration bill that was going to try to fix some of this stuff. And Trump didn't want to fix it. He made the House vote against it because he doesn't want a rational system. He wanted the system to fail. And they don't want law.
If you're enjoying, please subscribe. Now, George Conway, with the precision of a surgeon and the grace of a bull in a china shop, has been taking Vance and Trump to task. It's like watching a grown man roast a couple of overcaffeinated toddlers who somehow managed to steal a political platform. Conway's ability to rip through their absurdities is nothing short of a masterclass in political snark. While Vance and Trump seem to be stumbling through a world they barely understand, Conway calmly steps forward and exposes their inconsistencies like they're nothing more than paper-thin lies held together by hope, desperation, and a complete lack of self-awareness. When it comes to Trump, Conway's not pulling punches. He isn't shy about calling out the ridiculousness of the former president's constant flip-flopping, the incessant stream of half-baked promises, and the jaw-dropping levels of ignorance he so confidently flaunts. But it's Vance who really gets the full force of Conway's blistering critique. The man's entire political career seems like a bad parody of ambition, and Conway isn't having it.
He can't help himself but emotionally react to things. One of the things that he's a narcissistic sociopath. That's the thing everyone has to kind of get used to. It's the reason why you cannot normalize him. You cannot treat him like a normal human being because he's not. He is.
He calls out Vance's blatant pandering, his weird obsession with aligning himself with the most ludicrous corners of the Republican Party, and his desperate need for attention. The best part? Conway does it all with a cool, collected tone, as though he's casually pointing out the flaws in a toddler's drawing of a horse. It's effortless, it's cutting, and it's absolutely hilarious. Watching Conway decimate these two is like watching a comedian do stand-up, but instead of jokes, he's just dropping truth bombs in slow motion. The only tragedy here is that Vance and Trump have no clue they're the punchline. Trump's whole political persona is based on the idea that he's some sort of self-made genius, when in reality, he's about as self-made as a prepackaged sandwich from the gas station. The man has never worked an honest day in his life, unless you count dodging taxes and bankrupting multiple businesses as hard work. And yet, for some unfathomable reason, he still has people who look at him and say, yes, that's the man we need to lead this country. It's like watching someone walk into a burning building and then claiming they're the only one qualified to put out the fire.
I think everybody overthinks this guy. There's no strategy. There is no thought. And the brand is just him. He lives in this world where there's just him. Okay?
But it's not just him, George. It's a hell of a lot of people out there who've gotten sucked up into this thing and that are perpetuating
I agree with
that brand.
I'm talking about in his mind.
Okay.
None of us matter. Those people don't matter. They're not real people. He doesn't care what happens to them. If they show him adulation and they do what his bidding, that's good. If they don't do his bidding, he will destroy them. He will discard them. None of us, in his mind, okay, he's someone, as a man with no empathy, a man with no conscience. It's just him.
Vance, on the other hand, is playing a different game. His whole political career has been built on the idea that he's somehow the voice of the working class, despite the fact that he's spent most of his life firmly entrenched in the upper echelons of society. It's like watching a guy with $1 million trust fund try to lecture you about the struggles of being poor. Vance's entire existence is a case study in how to pander to a demographic while remaining completely out of touch with the realities of their lives. If you've ever wondered what it looks like to gaslight an entire state, just take a look at J.D. Vance's political career. He has the audacity to pretend he understands the people of Ohio, when in reality, he's just another rich guy with a shiny suit and a lot of opinions that were spoon-fed to him by his billionaire donors. Conway's takedown of these two is nothing short of a public service. It's a reminder that the political circus isn't just about Trump and his allies. It's about the spectacle of watching the emperor's new clothes get shredded by someone who's willing to tell the truth, no matter how many people it offends.
Far along there, and then I just started having this queasy feeling like I don't really want to work in this administration because I was just watching the shit show that was going on with the Russia thing, and with the firing of Comey, and the guy, it's just like the administration shrugged.
Trump's whole act is based on the idea that he's somehow untouchable, that his bluster and bravado make him impervious to criticism. But here comes Conway, calmly pointing out that Trump's entire persona is a house of cards built on lies, half-truths, and more egos than a Hollywood awards show. What's truly remarkable is that, despite all of Trump's bluster and bravado, he's somehow managed to convince people that he's the best thing that's ever happened to America. It's as if he's playing some bizarre game where reality doesn't apply and every absurd statement he makes is greeted with applause. But the truth is, Trump has proven time and time again that he's incapable of leading anyone unless they happen to be standing in line at a fast food joint while he's trying to buy a cheeseburger. The man's ability to talk without saying anything of substance is almost impressive. Except it's not, because it's just sad. And yet here we are, still listening to his rambling speeches as if they hold some sort of magic wisdom.
They can, they have to try sometimes because they're out there to remedy violations of the laws and the Constitution. But at the end of the day, the courts you can't have 600 plus federal judges trying to run the federal government through litigation when the president is just refusing to do his job, and not only refusing to do his job, basically saying F you to the duties that I have.
And then there's J.D. Vance, the man who thought that being a best-selling author qualified him for political office. Vance doesn't exactly have the kind of resume that screams political genius. If anything, it screams, I'm a rich kid who decided to write a book about poor people and now I think I understand the world. The only thing Vance understands is how to say just enough to keep his donors happy without ever actually taking a firm stand on anything. He's like the guy at the bar who talks a big game about politics but can't actually back it up when it's time to put the theory into practice. It's easy to sound tough when you're sitting in a comfy chair, sipping a latte, and talking about issues you'll never truly face. But when it's time to make real decisions that impact real people, Vance's political platform crumbles faster than Trump's approval rating after every tweet.
A lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me, at others in our administration for saying the obvious.
What makes Conway's takedown even sweeter is that he doesn't just stop at Vance and Trump. He doesn't just tear down their ideas, he exposes the very foundation of their political existence. These guys aren't just wrong, they're dangerous. They've built their careers on manipulating people, making empty promises, and pretending they understand the struggles of the common person. But in reality, they're just a couple of out-of-touch elitists who found a way to make a living off of playing pretend. It's not even about Vance or Trump anymore, it's about what they represent. The toxic cocktail of ego, greed, and sheer incompetence that has overtaken the political landscape. George Conway isn't just roasting these two for fun, he's exposing the rot at the core of American politics. He's showing the world that the real problem isn't just these two clowns, it's the system that lets them thrive. The system that rewards shallow rhetoric over real substance.
From 1980 to 2018, okay? I don't want to see a Republican Party led by a fascist, but he is a fascist. He cannot help but be a fascist. His personality disorders make him a fascist. He does not care about anyone else. He does not care about...
If there's one thing we can learn from all of this, it's that we've got to stop letting these political charlatans slide. We've got to stop listening to people who speak in platitudes but never actually deliver on anything. Vance and Trump have mastered the art of sounding like they know what they're talking about while saying absolutely nothing. And somehow, they've managed to convince large swaths of the American population that they're the saviors of the nation. Well, thanks to George Conway, it's finally clear to anyone with half a brain that these two are nothing more than the emperor with no clothes. Except this time, the truth is out, and it's not pretty. George Conway does not just call out Trump and Vance. He's calling out the entire circus that's been running for far too long. It's like watching two clowns juggle, except the audience is too scared to laugh because they're worried the clowns might throw pies at them. But Conway? He's not afraid to stand up and say, hey, these clowns are a danger to the show and to the country.
What do you know about the OPM and OMB, and they're just like offering people, not buyouts. Buyouts is a misnomer. They're basically just like, we're going to pay.
I mean, they're kind of, it's a combination of Project 2025 and shit coming out of Elon Musk's ass. Just forgive my language.
By exposing Trump and Vance for their incompetence and lack of integrity, Conway is doing what so many of us wish we had the courage to do, pointing out that these political misfits are far more interested in self-preservation than doing the right thing. We deserve better than these guys. We deserve politicians who can actually deliver solutions, instead of running on slogans, sound bites, and a hefty dose of delusion. What's truly wild is that these two have somehow managed to fool a sizable chunk of the population into believing there's something they're not. Vance with his air of intellectual superiority and Trump with his reality TV persona have played the game long enough to convince people they're the answer to America's problems. But it's all smoke and mirrors, and Conway's unveiling of that truth is like pulling back the curtain on a magic trick gone wrong. Let's hope the next time we see Vance or Trump strut, it's because they've finally realized they've been exposed for what they truly are. Just two men who got lucky enough to fool a few too many people for a little too long.